Okay, it's 6 p.m., so we're going to go ahead and get started. I want to welcome everybody to the Parks, Rec, and Trails Commission meeting here. Today is January 21st, so we'll go ahead and call the meeting to order and ask our clerk to take roll.
Chair Zimmerman.
Here.
Vice Chair Gidroy.
Here.
Commissioner Gaunt.
Here.
Commissioner Rosen.
Here.
Commissioner Croy.
Here.
Very good. And if we could have Commissioner Gaunt lead us in the flag salute, please.
Happy to. Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Okay, item 4 is presentations. So, Robert, can you tell us? No, we don't. That's not anything like that. All right. And then let's take a look at our meeting minutes. Has everybody had a chance to review them? Are there any modifications or revisions that are not required? I do have one, and it is on page 3. And it was talking about Chair Zimmerman recommends Director Lennox explain everything in the grant application. So I just wanted to say that, and I've asked Aisha, I kind of gave her a little print of this so she doesn't have to write it, but basically to change that to say, emphasize that the majority of the funds directed to the program expense rather than equipment per the grant guidelines. That's really what it was that I was saying. So if we could change that.
I move that we accept the minutes with its modification.
Motion, how about a second?
Second.
All right, we have a motion by Commissioner Rosen, second by Commissioner Gaunt. All in favor? Aye. So it's unanimous. And let's move now to, is there any agenda modification? Nothing, so we'll keep it the same. And do we have any public commenters or anyone filled out a speaker slip to speak?
Yes, we do. We have, is it Weber McKenzie? Did I say that right? No?
And if I can make a quick clarification, if the speaking item is on one of tonight's agenda items, we probably will hold off until that item, but if it's a general public comment item, it would be taken now.
That's correct.
And it's in regards to the Salt Creek Trail.
Okay, so let's wait for that one then, okay? And so any other public comments that are non-agenda items?
No.
Okay, thank you. So let's move to item 8, which is our workshop. It's item 8.1, and it's Salt Creek Trail Project Review. And I believe we have a guest from the Riverside County Regional Park and Open Space District, Mr. Mark Brewer. You're the one on the hot seat. Are we on? You guys hear me all right?
Yes.
No.
Well, before you get started, I just want to say thank you for coming here, taking your time to be here today. I think this is much anticipated, and all of us have been kind of chomping at the bit to see this, and I really believe that the community is going to absolutely love having this Salt Creek Trail once it's in place. We do have a trail that's along the Paloma Wash right over here by this Regent property project, and it is really utilized. I see people walking on that thing all the time. So once this Salt Creek Trail gets built, I think this community is going to absolutely love it. Okay, thank you. We're going to have you just hang on because the recorder needs to be able to pick up what you're saying.
If I can add a couple items of information regarding this item, staff has been meeting with the Riverside County staff, both Regional Park and Open Space, as well as TMLA, on the project in the last couple of months. And we're excited about the opportunity to have the very first segment of this regional trail come through Menifee, and I'm sure county staff are going to provide some information on funding as well as the general direction of that trail. But equally exciting is the fact that the first segment is the funded segment. So the reality of this being constructed in Menifee is much closer than the later segments. And so we're happy about that. In the most recent meetings with the county staff, community services, as well as public works and engineering, discussed some of the components of the trail, and did share some, just some engineering concerns that still are being worked through. Those include issues related to crossing at roads like Bradley, Marietta, Normandy. Some of them are low water locations, and a couple of them are the locations where we're planning to do future bridge overcrossings, namely at Marietta and Bradley. And so any construction of a trail segment now at those locations would have to take into account how that gets transferred or converted once a bridge is in place. And so those are still being worked through. And so when you hear presentation tonight, understand that some of this is going to be modified as we move forward.
Okay, thank you. Hey, we're hot.
There we go. Okay. Well, thank you, Robert, for the introduction, and thank you, Commissioner Zimmerman, right? You're the chair.
Yes, sir.
All right, I finally got it right. Well, good evening, and again, thank you for inviting us to come back and provide an update on the Salt Creek project. This is one of these ones that's really kind of exciting for us because there's not often that you see us being able to do something as big as what we're proposing to do through the city of Menifee for its citizens and to kick off this trail project as we move forward. By way of introduction, I'd also like to introduce Kathy Wappler from TMLA Transportation. Kathy is our project manager and is handling most of the daily operations on the trail. We've also asked our environmental specialist from TMLA to come, and her name's Frances Segovia. And then we have our environmental consultant from Power Engineering and our engineer from Michael Baker International out of their Ontario office. So to move forward quickly. Hello. You guys just don't like me tonight? Here we go.
There we go.
Okay, thank you. Before we can even start talking about Salt Creek Channel as a trail, I think there's an understanding you have to have an understanding of scope and a little bit of history as it relates to this project. Salt Creek actually began as a major drainage flood control operation by Riverside County Flood Control back in the early 70s. It's a unique project in the fact that at that time it was an 11-mile effort all the way from the city of Hemet past Sun City. It is now expanded to be about 16 miles going all the way to the city of Canyon Lake. What is equally unique about this project is that this project did not take a traditional approach about handling flood control water. I think most of us who were in the 50s, the 60s, and the 70s understood that when it came to controlling flood control, we put it in a big box, a big concrete V-ditch, and moved it down. This particular project, when they designed it, was actually visionary. They understood the topography, they understood the nature of the area that they were dealing with, and came up with a concept and a scope that would use a large flat bottom drainage swale with gentle sloping banks and a large shoulder on each side. And the intent of the large shoulder was for future open space or green belt activities so that you could have the potential for long linear parks on both sides of the channel. Our particular project, and as part of it, they also considered the recreational opportunity that you may be able to incorporate into those areas as part of the study. And what comes out of that is that if you look at what's on the board now, you'll see that they talked about picnic areas, playgrounds, play fields, walking and hiking trails, bicycle paths, equestrian paths, archery, equestrian centers, and outdoor activity. Well, 3 of those are something that we could accommodate fairly easily, and we can get a bang for our buck, and we could do it now. And that was the trail system. And this is just a visionary statement of what they anticipated this thing could look like. Now, mind you, this was done in the 70s. Okay, it is a totally different approach than what you would have normally seen in Riverside County. You would have seen something like San Savine Channel or Temescal Creek, where I mentioned that you would have big concrete boxes. Not belittling that, it has its function. But this is an opportunity to make the area in the flood control and the surrounding areas become a one whole unit. The original project, for lack of a better term, was a visionary concept. It's not something that we did very often in California. It demonstrated through proper planning, proper engineering, and environmental work that you could find a balance between function, the environment, and recreation. But for us, as trails planners with the Parks and Open Space District, this project's actually become a starting point to investigate opportunities for future recreation and trails. So Salt Creek Trail, what are we doing? Salt Creek Trail has been in the county's general plan since the early 1980s, actually mentioned in some of the late 1870s. It's 1970 documents. It's been plotted as part of the general plan system. It was included in the mapping of the 1986 update, which was approved in the 90s. But in 2003, we made a change. We identified Salt Creek, along with 4 other trails in western Riverside counties, as tiered trails. And these would be the trails that the district would focus on development of to build the regional and community trail system within this portion of the county or western Riverside County. And Salt Creek is one of the key links. Today, it's still in our current plan. It's been included in the 2008 update, which was just approved about a month ago. We have garnered public support for it. We have set in place partnerships, and we've actually been able to secure funding. So what we have now is a 16-mile trail. We go all the way from the intersection of Getz Road and the Salt Creek Channel all the way down to State Street and Champion in Hemet. We've divided the trail, whoops, excuse me, got ahead of myself. So that's the overall concept. Our current project team and partners are Valley-Wide Recreation, TMLA Planning, TMLA Transportation, Riverside County Flood, MWD, 2 major cities, Hemet and Menifee, and our consultant team of KTU Plus A out of San Diego, who did most of the master planning and initial trail alignment. Our environmental compliance team for both CEQA and NEPA is Power Engineering out of Anaheim. And our alignment, refinement, and engineering and the nuts and bolts guys of the project are Michael Baker International out of Ontario. Our process is fairly transparent. We've assembled partners, and we continue to look for and ask and work with more partners as we come along. We've set goals. We've looked at our opportunities and constraints. We've finished our trail location work. We've made key decision points to use existing and future development. And when I talk about the phasing, I will explain that a little better or in more detail. Our cost estimates are in the process of being prepared, and we're pretty good on our final alignment. The project components is, again, we have alternate alignments, final alignments, our environmental analysis and documents. We've received and continue to receive public input. We'll be doing engineering drawings at 30, 60, and 100%. We'll again refine our cost estimates, but at this particular phase, we've divided the project into 5 phases. The first 2 phases that have been funded, and that's been funded through an active transportation grant through RCTC, is Phase A and Phase E. That's the trail. Phase A goes from Getz Road all the way over to Antelope Road. We go under the 215, we stay on the north side of the channel. Phase B goes from Antelope Road up behind the Oasis Retreat on an existing trail that is maintained by the city of Menifee as well as Valleywide, and drops us down to Lindbergher. Say Phase C is from Lindbergher to Winchester Road. Phase D is Winchester to Anderson, and Phase E, which is the final section, which we're also seeking funding to do, have funding to do, will take us from Sanderson all the way up to Champion and State Street within Hemet. So we're doing the two major anchors, and we're working towards the middle. The reason we're doing that is that the Stamagoni portion of the project, or in between Lindenberger and Sanderson roads, are currently going to become our next hotspot for development. While we are fully aware that we have a lot of specific plans and track maps approved there, a lot of those plans are coming back in for renewal because of time constraint, which allows us to condition and go after off-site improvements. We've worked successfully with county planning on 3 or 4 of these cases. And as a matter of fact, we were working with one of the engineering companies in Riverside today regarding 3 tracks between the Damagoni Parkway and the flood control channel. So that's where we're deferring. We have funding in areas where we're pretty much built out, but where we're going to rely on portions of development of the trail, we're going to rely on condition of approval and seek additional funding. And I think I've already talked about that. Now, where Salt Creek is important, because remember I said it was a backbone trail, or one of our 5 tier trails. The other 4 tier trails in western Riverside County are the Santa Ana River Trail, the Butterfield Stage Route through the Temescal Valley, this alignment, the San Jacinto River Trail, and then there's one that always escapes me, and I don't remember which it is right now. But suffice it to say that we have the 5 trails. We get these trails built, and then you start to see how they work or relate to the building and improvement of the rest of the trail system. Salt Creek will impact the city of Hemet, to a certain degree the city of San Jacinto, and then the city of Menifee. You'll be able to link parks, commercial areas, all off of this trail. The other thing is that you'll have access and connections to the Wine Country Trail Network that's going up for approval within the next 2 months. There's a new multi-species reserve area trail between the Damagoni property at MWD and Lake Skinner, which will also daylight out of our Lake Skinner facility and into the wine country. Then you have the Butterfield Overland Stage Route, which will connect you into the Temescal Valley, take you down into San Diego County if you go to the south. If you go north, it'll take you up to the Santa Ana River Trail. And then Vines to Pines, which is kind of my nemesis, will connect the Idlewild Mountains to the Salt Creek Channel at State Street, which will also connect to the Wine Country Trails. But also understand we are currently in the process of doing a new master plan of trails with the National Forest Service, San Jacinto District, for the Upper May Valley. So when you think about it, this is a crucial trail that connects a host of different trails and trail activities for recreational value. In the Menifee segment, which is the biggest bang for the buck, and I'm going to let Kathy talk about. And if I do this right, there you go, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you, Mark. And I'm Kathy Wampler with the County of Riverside's Transportation Department. And although this is a park facility, the Transportation Department got involved because there are federal funds used for this project, and we have experience in administering federally funded projects. there are a lot more requirements, especially concerning environmental, that we have to work through. It kind of lengthens our process in actually delivering this project and having it constructed and being able to be used. As far as funding, we got through a grant application made by the Parks Department. They got congestion mitigation and air quality funds, CMAQ funds. Those are the federal funds, with a total of $5 million construction funds. So you can see the two segments that are going to be built with this particular project. The section in Menifee is about 4 miles at about $3 million worth of construction improvements. And the last segment there in Hemet, that's about 3.5 miles with the remainder $2 million of investment in there. Let's see if there's something else. Here's an overview of the trail alignment through the city of Menifee. As Mark mentioned, it starts on the west end at Getz Road, and it goes to Normandy. In that area, there is the residential development by Brookfield. Homes are being built there right now. And with those homes, Robert has, shared with us, and the developers shared with us that they plan some linear parks along that alignment, and this would connect nicely with that. The trail is consistently located along an existing maintenance road along the north side of Salt Creek. Generally, that is the Flood Controls District Maintenance Road, and that's what we're utilizing to build the trail on top of. So we have 3 street crossings at Normandy, at Murrieta, and at Bradley. It looks like our graphic put a little asterisk, but one of them dropped down there a bit off the graphic. So we have 3 crossings. We're proposing to put in pedestrian activated traffic signals to make it a safe crossing for the trail users. When there's no one at the trail, it'll just be a continual green light for motorists. So that continues to Murrieta, Bradley, and then we get over near the 215 freeway, and we start to enter into Caltrans right-of-way. And so we've been coordinating with Caltrans for permissions to use their right-of-way to construct this segment of the trail. And the trail will go underneath the freeway, and then we'll make a turn to go north, and it'll be between the freeway and Antelope Road. There's a wide dirt area there right now. We'll construct the trail along there. That's actually still Caltrans right-of-way. And it will terminate at Aldergate. There's an all-way stop at Aldergate right now. And so we'll utilize the crosswalk to get to the east side of Antelope. And the future extension of the trail system takes off from that direction. So that's the trail from beginning to end. And then what does the trail look like? We're somewhat constrained by what available space we have on the Flood Control District maintenance road. And so what we're envisioning is a basic 12-foot wide bike trail with 2 feet of extra shoulder, so we have 14 feet of pavement. And then we have adjacent to it a DG surface 5 feet wide. And what we have envisioned now is, it can be utilized by cyclists, runners, joggers, pedestrians. It will be ADA compliant so that persons with disabilities are also able to use the trail. I think that's about all I can add. Before I forget to mention, we do have flyers near the doorway and project comment cards that the county can collect feedback. So that's available to anybody in the audience that would like to fill those out.
Ms. Wampler, would you please stay at the podium for a sec? I think we have a couple questions for you, starting with Commissioner Rosen.
What are you doing about equestrian?
Mark may be able to also help me with this, but the soft surface trail can also accommodate equestrians. They are not prohibited.
Commissioner, the 5-foot trail is actually designed to accommodate the equestrian activity. Now, there are going to be certain areas where we do have to close the width of the trail down some, but we believe that either by moving the trail to increase the shoulder width or adjusting it in the field, we'll be able to accommodate equestrian activity. But we are making the accommodation for the soft surface trail for equestrian activity.
You are using only one of the two sides.
Yes.
What are you doing with the other side?
Well, the other side, on one typical section, you have an increased 2-foot asphalt section with a 2-foot shoulder. And the other one, we have 2 feet shoulders on each side. So it really depends how it's going to fall out.
I'm just concerned about the fact that you want that 5 foot to accommodate both directions.
Yeah.
That, okay. I'll turn over to Rick.
A couple of questions for you. This is very, very exciting, as we've been waiting a long time for this. The crossings, do we know eventually what's going to happen at Bradley? Are they going to be over crossings? Is the trail going to be over, or are we going to do an under, like at Winchester and the Salt Creek Trail, or do we know yet?
I haven't seen the concept plans for that. We did meet with the city engineer, Jonathan Smith, and he was going to be coordinating that, letting that design team know about the trail. And so we hope that they will incorporate it into the design.
Okay. Another question is, this is going to be non-motorized? No motorized, or golf carts are going to be allowed, or do we know?
The intent right now is for cyclists and pedestrians.
One
There
of the
could
things,
be opportunity in the future to expand the facility, but that would probably require more funds than have been allotted for us
Yeah.
for this project.
okay. One of the connections that seems to be missing here is where the trail along the Paloma Wash comes up and hits that south side of the trail. It would seem that would be a great connection there if we could keep that in mind. I mean, that's going to be in the future, I'm sure, but there's, just behind City Hall here, there's the trail that would be connection there too. Also, flood control will retain the authority over it once everything's said and done?
Well, excuse me, we typically, in Riverside County, there is a board policy that we are supposed to work, flood control is supposed to work with us regarding the development of trails within their right-of-ways, and this is one of those cases where this project is suited.
Okay.
Maintenance on the trail is going to fall, hopefully, will be with Parks Department. What you will find is that we have entered into these agreements down in the Wildemar area. We've actually entered into the agreements along Temecula Creek. The agreement that we enter into basically gives them right of inspection if we're not doing the appropriate things to keep the trail maintained properly and in a safe manner. They have the right to close the trail.
Right.
There will be the potential need along this trail for the possible installation of floodgates. which would close access to the trail during inclement weather periods or areas where flood control makes the ultimate decision that it's an unsafe environment.
All right. Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Gidroy.
I was wondering, where are there going to be access points along the trail? Have you figured out how frequently, how they're going to be available to the public? You're talking about having to close it possibly. And also, would there be a place for folks to, say, park their car or set up to ride their horse?
Do you want to, Liz?
Part of that.
Yeah, start, I'll finish.
As far as access points, primarily the access is going to be at the major street crossings. The new development on the west end by Brookfield Homes, they're going to have the tract tie into the trail, so there's going to be openings available. We also talked with Robert that along some of the existing residential areas, there are some open lots between homes, and depending on who owns that and the feedback of the community, if they want those fences right now to be open to allow that connectivity and that use, then that's something that the county is open to as well.
I do see the one retention area there, I think we've looked at, and there is a lot of space there, possibly put a trailhead.
Yeah, parking and a trailhead is not specifically being provided with the project at this time.
So points along the trail really need to be identified yet, so we could work with you to make sure those plots of land are available.
Yes, as far as tying into those existing
Right.
residential areas,
Mm-hmm.
yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
We need to make a note of that.
Commissioner Rosen.
Just wanted to mention, therefore, you're suggesting people could enter at Antelope to go underneath the 215. I've had some interesting things with Caltrans. I live near there. If you go up Antelope, it looks very much like they're closing it. They're closing the opening, which I've already asked Mark to take a look at. Okay? But certainly Antelope, Bradley, Murrieta, and along wherever the developer is going to allow to go in. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? And then in a second, we'll take public comments. Go ahead, Commissioner Gaunt.
Since the county sent out this flyer to the people in the area that I live on, off of Potomac, there's a whole stretch of trailway between Murrieta Road and Bradley, well, even beyond Bradley and almost over to the freeway. An awful lot of houses along there that back up to this trail. I know on the south side of the channel, it's mostly walled. People that live there, their backyards are walled off. On the north side where the trail is going to be, I've had, since this flyer went out, and people know that I live in the area, our neighbors, and one of my best friends asked me, is anything going to change? Is this going to be something they can look out their backyard and be proud of? Or are they going to have to worry about people climbing their fence? And they're just concerns. There's some concerns and questions. So I just want to make sure we get everything answered as best we can, because I certainly don't have all the answers. And I know we're not planning on building a sound wall or anything like that. So that's just the only comment I wanted to make, that will be addressed.
Yes.
I do have one question. Did you want to say?
I was just going to say that in our meetings with the flood control district, I had asked them, how do they feel about people coming into their flood control facility? And one of the things that kind of surprised me was that they said that they encourage it because the increased number of eyes on that area actually promotes, better security and more eyes to see things that need attention or maintenance. And so people right now can access that maintenance road and walk along it, as I'm sure they do right now. Maybe when it's improved, there'll be even more people using it and more eyes. And maybe if it goes along with what flood control said, maybe a little more secure from that standpoint.
A lot less graffiti, and I think the answer to your question is the trail design there, it's sure looks a lot better than what's there now. for sure.
Absolutely.
Well, please also understand too, and we're finding this like on the Santa Ana River Trail with the increased number of bicycles that we're getting now, is that actually bicyclists are actually our best eyes and ears on the trail. I mean, they do, we've gone in and put mile markers in for not only urban fire and rescue, but, it's actually a reference point that if they see something, it's not uncommon for the bicyclist to call and say, this is not appropriate, or something's going on here. And so, it's actually become self-policing. I mean, I'm not discrediting what you're saying. I mean, it's very common. I mean, we dealt with one section of the Santa Ana River Trail where people thought that they were going to have homeless people coming into their backyard, and it just didn't come to fruition. There are areas where it's a perception that I can't change. I can show you statistics that says it helps you it provides a safer environment, but I still can't change that perception. So, we're aware of it. We will do everything in our power to address it. And I agree with Mr. Coy, that it is what we will provide you will be much nicer than what's out there now.
Go ahead, Ken. I think you still have-
I can also add, I think the type of people that will be using the trails is certainly, I mean, there's nothing wrong. They're good people, people that ride bikes and people that jog and hike and.
Well, and part of what we've found, even on the Santa Ana River Trail, we were building the section through an area that was working class, and as it backed up to the Santa Ana River and our trail coordinator, it didn't look nice. But before we could even get the asphalt down, we had people figuring portholes out of their neighborhood to get out and walk on the trail. So it actually brought the community out, and the community became more self-policing. And actually, some of these people have actually improved the visual quality or the character of their backyard. So, it's give and take. I'm not going to promise you that's going to happen. But we're going to provide those residents the opportunity to get out on that trail and walk and help improve, ride, walk, jog, whatever. And, they'll have the opportunity to either do destination type transport activity or just a short loop that takes them out onto the trail and back into their neighborhood.
Let's hear from Commissioner Rosen, and then I'm going to make a quick comment, and then we'll open it up to the public, and then we can get back into this a little bit. So go ahead, Marty.
Just a little bit about graffiti. Whenever you open up something like that, you always open yourself up to people deciding they want to draw. Have you made some kind of allowance for quick removal?
We got the equipment. Serious, I'm not being funny, Marty. We have the steam heated units in staff to knock it down. We can also work with the counties and Economic Development Agency, which also has graffiti removal, and hopefully if the city has something, we can coordinate with them too.
Okay, thank you.
Robert?
Along those lines, the city's policy, and especially in our parks and trail areas, is abatement of graffiti within 48 hours of reporting. So I don't know what the county's response time is. That's typically what we try to do. If it stays beyond that, usually our code enforcement would come by and try to find the property owner.
Okay. Very good. One quick question I'm sure a lot of people are going to want to know is timing. When do you anticipate getting the shovels on the ground?
We expect in 2018.
Okay. 2018.
So in about 2 years from now. The longest part, as I mentioned before, is that environmental process.
Very good, thank you. At this time, let's go ahead and ask for our public comment. I think somebody filled out a speaker slip, right?
Correct. Is it Walker McGee? Wallace? I'm
Mr.
sorry about that.
McGee, please take the podium. You got 3 minutes, and hopefully we can get your questions answered.
I've been in California all my life. I've heard these projects and promotions and different things like that. Lived in Yorba Linda, had master plans time after time. And now we have this. We're the last ones to find out, the residents, of what's going on. And we back up, we live on Potomac, my wife and I. I've been out here 15 years, been maintaining golf courses and that for my life over 50 years. And when you have these lights on Murrieta, they run those things. School buses in the mornings, they run those lights. So that's not a, something that you're going to take and be able to take and have a regular traffic signal there. It doesn't work. I'll tell you that right now. I've seen it. I was almost a victim myself. So, and then the same thing with the graffiti that you're talking about here. That happened down at the south or the east end of Potomac. Some people got in there and started mouthing off to some of the residents and that. The residents were the resistance of the graffiti. And they got out on their garage doors also. So you're just inviting trouble. And the flood control is the worst maintained facility. It's an embarrassment. They come out here about 3 or 4 times a year, and all we get is dust. We're the recipients of the dust that come out there, even at this time of year. You go out on your patio, you have to hose it down on a regular basis with all the dust. And like I said, the flood control is their thing. It's a poor excuse of maintenance. I've been involved with the maintenance all my life, and poor at best. So I give them an F minus. And same thing, I lived on Carmel for 10 years. Flood control there, they denied it was their property. You drive up that area there, it's a mess. They never maintain anything. So if you're relying on them, forget it. That's my feeling right now. It's money if they're spending it, it's very poor spent. And you can talk to them and different things like that. It goes one ear and right out the other side. It doesn't stop. So like I say, I'm involved with maintenance. I know what it is. And believe me, they're very poor at it. And whether it needs it or not, they'll come down through. I'm out there cleaning up the weeds in the back of my house all the time, the tumbleweeds. And on the slope and everything down there. I maintain it. I'm one of the few people that gets out there and does it. I'm fortunate that I'm able to do it. But to rely on them doing it, forget it. It's not going to happen. So it'll be a cold day.
I appreciate you coming, taking your time tonight, Mr. McGee. Any other public speakers?
Yes, Kristen Bond.
Hi, my name's Kristen Bondi, and I live here in Menifee, have acreage. My child, who's sitting right there, he is 17, soon to be 18, and when he was like 2 or 3, I got involved in this area before it was a city on the trails. So we got together and we talked, and this trail specifically was talked about. They did say at one point they had somebody that donated trees. It was a while ago, like 10 years ago. So I don't know whatever happened to that. That would definitely beautify it, cut the dust down for you. And it would make shade for all of us that are going to use the trails. So I just want to state I'm an equestrian, okay? So I am going to utilize these trails. I'm actually by Paloma High. So I have property in an arena, and I don't use quote, trails anymore, not that there are any in our area. But I don't use them because it's dangerous. Even when my child was, I want to say he was like 7, he had a pony and I would pony him. But in order to get to any of the open land, I had to go along the roads. And people are not nice. Between being on the side of the shoulder of the road, and you've got a property here with dogs in it, and they charge you, and you've got traffic going on this side of you, what happened was it spooked his pony, and his pony went to get away from me, and I've got a car coming up on this side, and they're honking their horn at you because they don't understand. Not a lot of people understand horse communication. Scared the horse, which made the horse run. So I decided to fall off my horse and hold on to my child and let my horse run so that he was safe. So I'm all for this trail. I'm for accessing it. I am for helping to maintain it. I'd be willing to come out and clean up manure and whatever it takes, but I am all for it. So I just wanted to let you know that.
Thank you for being here, appreciate it. Any other speakers, Madam Clerk?
Not at this time. Thank you.
All right, very good. So we'll go ahead and pull it back behind the rail. Any other questions or comments? Commissioner Croy?
Yes, I feel your pain, owning 5
Easy to
horses.
question.
I've been there, done that. I've ridden this trail from stem to stern. The important thing is that we now have a plan, which is wonderful. And I agree with you that unfortunately, there's no curing knuckleheads out there that just don't slow down. I live right along Garbani Road, which is, we call it the Garbani Proving Ground, especially when you're riding a horse. Sometimes people speed up just to see what's going to happen. But this affords us a great opportunity to get it in a safe location and continue with the idea that as long as you know they're there, and the more they're used, the safer they become. And one thing you did mention that I think is interesting is that I belong to a riding club that volunteers in helping out places. We did some improvements with Bill and Marty up in Cabian Park and Mr. Gidroy's. That's good stuff, and once this gets going, we need to get out there and make sure that we all volunteer and maintain these trails as they come on board. Thank you.
Commissioner Rosen?
We need to put on our docket to look, we need to put on our docket to look at possible staging areas along here where people can come with a horse trailer and park it and, take off from there, get onto the trail, but a secure location where they can leave their trailer. And also a place where we put some water so that they can get water.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
I have a question that's kind of related to civil engineering a little bit. We did get some of these drawings that show where the trails are along Salt Creek, and they're primarily placed on the north side of the wash, except for when you come to Murrieta and Bradley, and then it takes a little sweep to the south side, and then that's where the crossing is. And so if I could just ask for the rationale for that, please.
Okay. That existing flood control maintenance dirt road, it goes straight, but it has a very steep slope, and it's too steep to meet ADA requirements.
Okay.
So we have to start farther back, and we have to come down the slope, and we cross it more towards the center of the wash.
Okay.
In a couple of locations, it actually serves us to be farther away from the next closest street intersection. We want to make sure that we have enough distance between between the signalized a trail crossing and an all-way stop. So
Okay.
there were a few engineering reasons why it dropped down.
And unfortunately, it'll be an inconvenience at times, especially when it has rained and that lower part becomes absolute muck. And if we need to have the trail go from the north to the south side of the wash, you got to go through the muck. So I don't know if there's ways of mitigating that with armor flex or some of the kinds of things you can put along the bottom that give it a little bit more sturdy base, but I'd certainly encourage something like that.
We are definitely going to have soils testing done, and we're going to engineer it to make sure that the road is stable. And, I don't know about the silt that might get and debris that might get on top, but it'll be structurally sound.
And then one last question. At those crossings, we see similar ones in Sun City where the golf course has you go from one side of the street to the other. The light for the motorized traffic is always green until a golfer pushes the button. I think it'd be the same. Considering equestrian, will there be a higher button for a rider?
Yes,
Okay, great. Thank you.
yes.
Commissioner, oh, is it Robert?
I just wanted to show you something that Robert had indicated, it's all within the same section. It's not on the other side.
I think what Commissioner Rosen's pointing out is that the transition of the trail isn't actually to the south side of the wash. It's just to the bottom of the north
Oh, I
side
see.
slope, right?
Yeah.
So it doesn't go even past the middle of the wash.
Okay.
It just drops down below.
I'm seeing it wrong. Thank you for the clarification.
Sure.
Commissioner Gahn.
Mr. Chairman, I was going to ask Robert, do you know the timetable for the Bradley Road improvement over Salt Creek?
The Bradley project is nearly fully funded. The Marietta one is not funded at all. So there's two hurdles there. Not to be, they're in design phase right now on the Bradley piece. But it's still going to be probably a year before they start moving much.
So my point being, that'll probably be done before the trail situation, because that would change the crossing, of course.
That would be ideal. I haven't talked with our engineering team about their hard timeline on it, but can certainly provide that to the commission.
I just wanted to mention that this project isn't scheduled to begin until 2018, so hopefully that will be finished before they start their construction.
Commissioner Gidrose.
Well, coming back to access points, obviously, the public wants to be informed before these things take place. Do you have any notion when we will be identifying where those will be and how they'll be noticed to the folks who live near them for their input and responses?
It's one of the items I was going to follow up with Robert with, and see what kind of feedback we might need from those residential neighborhoods. We could have the trail there. It can be something that the connections can be made even afterwards, if that.
I'm thinking maybe not just noticing people, perhaps a workshop here in the city so folks could come and hear about it and respond about it. Make sure that it's copacetic with them as much as possible, and also still the public is getting its access.
Yes, definitely. I envision there was probably homeowners associations out there that might be a good starting point for if there's access points, and they can reach out and we can make presentations to those groups as well.
There'll be a couple opportunities along the way to vet this process. Our typical processing of a project is obviously through Planning Commission and Parks Commission with the formal submittal of the conceptual and working drawings. Those will all still be in the queue, so to speak. So you'll get to see this again with more definite design features. And then, as an example, whenever we put in a facility in an existing neighborhood that, say, for example, has lights, we do have to, pursuant to NIMBY, ensure the community is aware and has a chance to voice their opinion. So that is something that still has to occur on this project as well.
Okay.
And as you may know, we sent out notices to all property owners and residents within 500 feet of the proposed trail.
Is the EAR done on this or no? Still working on
The environmental document is in process.
it? Okay.
Oh, and by the way, the notices we sent out 900 for tonight's meeting. So we tried to reach out as best we could.
Very good. Any other questions? All right. Well, we want to thank you very much.
Thank you.
We've all been educated on this, and I had a lot of questions, and I think you answered all mine, and hopefully everyone's. So, and appreciate the members of the public coming out and bringing their comments and concerns as well. So, thank you very much.
Great, thank you.
All right. Our next item, moving on, is item 9, and it's a discussion item only. We don't need to make any decisions, I believe. And it's regarding Santa Rosa Academy Joint Use Agreement.
And actually, there is a vote to be taken on this item. It's,
Making a recommendation?
yes,
Okay.
recommendation to City Council to authorize our city manager to execute the agreement. This joint use agreement is not a typical one, at least not by title. Usually, a joint use agreement is somewhat reciprocal in that most times the city would be asking a school for use of their facilities on a recurring basis. As you recall from our park master plan, that is a goal, that is a objective of the master plan, and we'll be bringing those forward in the next 6 months or so for the various school districts. But this is unique in that Santa Rosa Academy, which is a charter school, will be has requested use of one of our local parks, Lyle Marsh, as a staging area, secondary staging area in the event of an emergency. They have their home fields, their athletic fields, as their primary emergency staging site. But in the event of an emergency where that location is not accessible, not usable, their emergency plan requires them to identify a secondary location. This does that. Staff's reviewed this, and the city attorney has reviewed this and feels that it passes the sniff test. Any use costs would be waived for emergency use. However, if there are hard costs resulting from the use, meaning use of water, electricity, damage, those would be reimbursed to the city by the school after we have identified the costs. So staff's recommendation is that the commission approve the recommendation to City Council.
And Lyle Marsh Park is closest proximity to the school, and now La Piedra Road doesn't go through currently, but they could basically still walk across that.
And it is planned for connection in the future. I do want to highlight, this is not intended to suggest that the school has free use or open use of Lyle Marsh for their athletic uses. This is only for emergency uses.
Thank you for the clarification. Any questions or concerns or
Actually,
input?
oh,
Who'd
I
like to
think-
go first?
Well, go ahead.
age before beauty, huh? All right. I think we should do this. I mean, it's only the right thing to do. They do need this, and it's required that they have a secondary use. So it's not being used on a regular basis, only in cases of an emergency. So I suggest that we do it.
Okay.
If you want me to make a motion, I will.
I'm just curious, they need to have a secondary location, but they've already built the school and it's operating. This kind of comes up after the fact, doesn't it?
It could be a cleanup item from when they originally created their emergency plan. I don't know that detail, but they're asking now. So
Okay.
yeah.
It just struck me as a little bit after the fact.
Yeah.
And then you said the city attorney has reviewed it, so there's no liability on the part of the city by doing this.
None at all.
Okay, thank you.
I move that we recommend to the city council that they approve this.
We have a motion by Rosen, a second by Croy. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, it's approved unanimously. Next, Community Services Director comments.
Mine are very brief. Only one item, which actually will probably be easier to add on item number 12, is there's a future item for the annual appointments of MCAC members. That's the Menifee Citizen Advisory Committee. And that will be on the next agenda, first meeting in February for your consideration.
Very good, thank you. Anything else? All right, so let's move on then.
Oh, yeah, there is one question that I have with that. You said first in February. An email that I received, there are 2 meetings of MCAC in February. Is our meeting before it?
Yes, the commission meeting is on the 4th, and the 2 MCAC meetings are after that.
Thank you, that's all I
Yes.
wanted.
And I'm sorry, I was going to add one other thing. During the February 4th meeting, as a presentation, we will have both new community services staff members here for introductions.
Excellent, let's move to Commissioner reports, and Commissioner Gaunt, do you have anything for us?
Just a comment, Mr. Chairman. A couple of months ago, A couple of months ago, I brought in, I reported on some signs that were nailed into some trees on some of our parks and, and on the sign, you know, like I flip houses signs or carpet cleaning and that sort of thing. And we talked about it just briefly here, and we didn't do anything, nothing we can do. We just were told that the Public Works or staff is pulling signs when they see them. The next day, well, there was a councilman in the audience that night. He called me the next day and said, why don't you contact, I forget what it's called now, the code enforcement, and also the Public Works Department. Because Public Works apparently does the sign removal on right-of-way property, and I think code enforcement does the illegal signs and other stuff on private property. So anyway, to date, I've pulled about 200 signs out of the city because I graduated into just anything that's in the right-of-way, nailed on posts. And I mean, you see these signs everywhere. And I don't want it to start looking like some of our neighbor cities. So I was just wondering, would it be appropriate for this council to appoint me as a committee of one to do this so that I can feel legal and I don't have to feel like I have to do it in the middle of the night? And also, I'd like to have a copy of the ordinance, and I will call these people, if I can use a phone here, I will call them and tell them that what the ordinance is and inform them that they're breaking the law, please stop doing it. Because they come back. They come back every week and they hang a whole bunch more. And it's a blight. And is there any interest in pursuing this from our end? Probably not, but just wanted to speak about it for a minute. Didn't know if you knew that many signs are being pulled.
Well, it sort of limited in what we can discuss since it's not an agendized item, but my recommendation would be to, and we can facilitate this through Community Services Department, we can communicate that through code enforcement and probably direct the efforts that you're seeing out on the streets so that they know where to go and retrieve them. They pop up all over the place. You're absolutely right. Sometimes there's hot spots, sometimes there's, not. And we see them even in the parks, and anything in a park, our park maintenance guys pull down. And then even anything in one of our landscape parkways, our park maintenance guys pull down. But if you're seeing additional ones, you're doing some of that legwork. I'd encourage maybe a discussion with my department, and we can link up with code enforcement to try and resolve it more effectively. Yes.
Go ahead, Tom.
Just a thought, this is something we could discuss on a future agenda. If there's signs in the park and we have a phone number, obviously, perhaps we could fine those folks for putting them up in the park and the cost of our folks taking them down.
Yeah, and we've done some of that, and relaying to code enforcement. Code's perspective on it is that unless there is because a park is not the right of way, unless there is a explicit sign, one of our signs that says no public advertising or posting of signs, then their feeling is that they can't cite them. I have a philosophical difference on that opinion.
Why don't we just post a sign
I
like
agree.
that?
Well,
Wait.
this is a point for maybe a future discussion. We could
Sure.
pass our thoughts down to the council about code enforcement's position.
Yes, and I agree with that. The only risk that we run into is sign pollution within our parks. There's a laundry list of prohibitions, and if we were put in a position where we had to list them all, people would be a little less inclined to come to the park because there's a billboard that says about 300 things you can't do. So it's a fine line, and we're trying to find a nice way to approach it.
Okay.
But in the meantime, can we ask Ken to
Continue his vigilante
continue
work.
his vigilante removal of signs and hand it in to code enforcement?
I can do that. Easier. Turn them over to
Yeah.
the city?
Give them to code enforcement. Tell them where you got it. And you took it over.
I can do that, whatever.
Okay, anything else?
Do we need a
Commissioner?
vote on this? No. Okay.
Any other commissioner comments?
No, that's it.
That's it. Commissioner Croy, do you have anything? Commissioner
No, we're
Rosen,
done.
Commissioner Gidroy?
No.
Okay, I don't have any either. So how about any future agenda request from the commissioners? Anything that's not on the list already?
We could talk about signage.
Yeah, right, sign it. All right, hearing none, I think we ought to adjourn.
Move to approve.
Second.
All right, we are adjourned. Thanks, everyone, for coming out tonight.